The earth sometimes whispers stories of agony. Bones of creatures long gone, embedded in the ground, can speak of brutal, tragic endings. I have seen that kind of story written in stone. Over 10,000 Centrosaurus bones, all in one place. It speaks of a single, devastating event. A mass drowning that became a dinosaur graveyard. The place where it all happened is now known as the Drowning Cemetery. The Centrosaurus was a medium-sized herbivore living in the late Cretaceous period, some 76 million years ago. I picture it, a creature with a large nasal horn and an ornamented frill. A symbol of power, yes, but perhaps also a victim of its own evolution. They were about 6 meters long, weighing over 2 tons, and adapted to life in herds. And it was precisely this group life that sealed their fate on that day. The site, now in southern Alberta, Canada, holds one of the largest fossil concentrations ever recorded. It was once a floodplain near an ancient river, but then became the collective grave of an entire herd. A macabre photograph of a moment of natural horror, preserved in time. I imagine the rain falling in a torrential downpour. Within hours, the water transformed a familiar territory into chaos. Mud, raging currents, and despair. The saturated ground began to collapse. The Centrosaurus, caught by surprise, tried to flee, but the mass escape only generated more destruction. Those at the front were the first to fall, trampled by their panicked companions. Others were swept away by the force of the flood, dragged into lower areas where they were buried alive by the mud that consumed everything. Some, younger or already weakened, simply couldn't keep pace with the herd. Death was swift for some, slow and agonizing for others. What remained was a tangled mass of bodies compressed under tons of flesh, bone, and earth. And then, with time, silence. Decomposition gave way to fossilization. Horror turned into geological record. Millions of years later, humans would excavate that soil with brushes and spatulas, with a patience that rivaled the passage of time itself. Paleontologists revealed to the world an unprecedented discovery. More than 10,000 bones belonging to a single species in a single location. The Drowning Cemetery revealed. The scientists' interpretation was immediate and brutal. This wasn't the result of deaths occurring over generations. This was a single event, a sudden catastrophe that wiped out an entire herd. The uniformity of the fossils, the lack of erosion on the bones, the absence of signs of predation. Everything there screamed urgency, desperation, tragedy. Now I turn my attention to another fossil, another dark story. One marked by pain, survival, and violence. Imagine an animal more than 9 meters long, weighing between 6 and 12 tons, slowly walking across the plains of a lost world. Its name, Triceratops horridus. With 3 sharp horns and a protective bony frill, this giant herbivore was one of the last dinosaurs to inhabit the Earth before the mass extinction event approximately 66 million years ago. Among the many fossils discovered, one Triceratops skull tells a particularly intriguing story. What caught the paleontologists' attention weren't just the well-preserved bones, but perforations located in vulnerable areas of the facial bone. These perforations, when analyzed, revealed a specific pattern. A curvature, a spacing between the marks, a depth compatible with only one living creature of that time, Tyrannosaurus rex. The powerful jaws of this predator could exert a force of more than 5 tons. enough to crush bone and tear away entire chunks of flesh. But what makes this case so intriguing is that the Triceratops didn't die at the moment of the attack. Quite the opposite. The bone surrounding the perforations shows clear signs of irregular growth, a biological reaction to the body's attempt to heal, an inflamed type of bone callus typical of infection. The Triceratops survived. This discovery changes the traditional narrative of the late Cretaceous food chain. Instead of a simple predation scene, we're faced with a more complex drama. The attack, survival, infection, continuous pain, and finally a slow death. The skull becomes a witness not only to a brutal fight, but also to the resilience of a wounded animal struggling to carry on. The infection that settled into the perforations of the skull was severe. The disorganized bone growth indicates that the body reacted however it could. This inflammatory response is a clear sign that it lived for several weeks after the attack, perhaps even months. Every movement of the jaw, every bite of leaves or branches caused pain. Finally, let's consider another dramatic testimony from the age of dinosaurs, this one from the heart of the Gobi Desert, one of the most inhospitable and arid regions on the planet. A moment frozen more than 70 million years ago, where life and death became intertwined in a fierce dance. This is the fossil known as the fighting dinosaurs, Protoceratops versus Velociraptor. Two names, two destinies sealed in a confrontation as brutal as it was intimate. On one side, Protoceratops, a medium-sized herbivore with a large bony frill and a beak sharp as scissors. On the other, I've seen the instant of combat frozen in stone. A velociraptor, leg raised, driving its killing claw into the neck of a Protoceratops. The herbivore, in its final act, biting down hard on the attacker's arm. No victor, only mutual death. The sand, rich in minerals, became an extraordinary agent of preservation, maintaining their relative positions, limbs, teeth, and claws, all frozen in time. It's as if time itself paused to record the raw ferocity of nature. They tried to flee, to survive, but there was no time. Sandstorms, violent floods, mudslides, sudden, merciless forces that transformed the landscape in the blink of an eye. Those who lived there were swallowed alive by the very environment they once called home. These fossil sites reveal something rare. Moments of prehistoric life frozen in time, not in isolation, but in community. Entire dinosaur families, from juveniles to adults, preserved side by side, their deaths bearing witness to an instant of collective panic. These weren't natural deaths, isolated or spread out over time. They were sudden, catastrophic moments when nature turned against its own children with devastating fury. In China's Yixian Formation, entire groups of Centrosaurus, small bipedal herbivores, have been found piled together in layers of volcanic sediment, buried alive by ash from a sudden eruption. In Mongolia, sandstorms engulfed dinosaurs mid-motion, their poses revealing final attempts to escape. In Madagascar, a mudslide captured an entire group of Majungasaurus, feared predators crushed, immobilized, and preserved. And in North America, in locations like the Morrison Formation, remains of Diplodocus and other sauropods appear grouped in patterns, suggesting entire herds were wiped out by sudden floods. These sites allow us to see how dinosaurs lived, how they organized themselves into herds, families, and social structures, and how even in groups they were vulnerable to the power of nature. Then there's the Pachyrhinosaurus, crushed in a stampede. In the petrified silence of time, when the world was ruled by gigantic reptiles, a tragedy unfolded beneath the darkened skies of ancient North America. These bones belong to Pachyrhinosaurus, a gregarious herbivore. It isn't the animal's appearance that draws attention, but the way it died. Paleontologists excavating a vast rock formation in Alberta encountered a macabre scene. Dozens of Pachyrhinosaurus fossils stacked atop one another, with bones crushed and fractured. The pattern of fractures on those Pachyrhinosaurus skeletons, it didn't suggest a sudden fall, or even a predator attack. It was something far more chaotic, a stampede. The compression marks tell a terrifying story of panic, of animals colliding in a desperate attempt to flee. I imagine the scene. A herd in frenzy, perhaps startled by a wildfire or a sudden storm. Some fall, others stumble over them, and the combined weight of dozens of tons becomes a deadly instrument for the weakest. Among the fossils, they found juveniles, adults, even hatchlings. This range of ages, it suggests they lived and died as a family. Pachyrhinosaurus, imposing as it was a peaceful herbivore with complex social behaviors. Evidence suggests they cared for their young, maybe protecting them in defensive circles, like modern elephants. But no defensive formation can withstand panic. It's not that they all died immediately. Some fossils show healed fractures, meaning certain individuals survived for a time, even with broken bones. But others show signs of acute and lethal trauma. The microfractures reveal the force didn't come from above, like a landslide, but from all directions, as if the bodies were compressed within a living mass of desperation. Paleontologists call this herd death, a natural catastrophe that, ironically, preserves fossils so effectively. Then there's the Carnotaurus with the fractured jaw. Imagine it, a feared predator roaming what we now know as South America, over 70 million years ago. Carnotaurus, meaning meat-eating bull, one of the largest and most agile theropods of its time. But even kings have weaknesses. And sometimes the silent fossil tells a story that goes beyond strength and ferocity. A story of pain, struggle, and perhaps silent defeat. This specific Carnotaurus fossil revealed a mystery hidden in its jaw, a significant, unhealed fracture. The break was clear and deep, and it must have compromised the entire side of its mouth, directly affecting its ability to hunt, to feed, to survive. It wasn't a superficial fracture. It was a severe rupture in the lower jawbone. A wound that would have caused extreme pain and made even the most basic movements difficult. The absence of any signs of healing was the first warning sign. And a singular fossil, discovered in Montana, revealed a fascinating detail about the life of this predator: bite marks on its own bones, made by another Tyrannosaurus rex. This discovery, surprising and unsettling, sheds light on Tyrannosaurus rex behavior in a way we could only imagine. The tooth marks embedded in the fossilized bones don't belong to a smaller predator. They match the robust, widely spaced, deeply penetrating dentition of another tyrannosaur. This forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about their social and feeding behavior. Are we looking at cannibalism, or a fierce territorial dispute, or simply the remains of a meal where opportunity outweighed any social restraint. To understand the significance of this, we have to understand who Tyrannosaurus rex was. Measuring 13 meters in length, nearly 4 meters tall at the hips, and possessing a jaw capable of exerting up to 6 tons of pres, Tyrannosaurus rex wasn't merely a predator. It was a bone crusher. Its banana-shaped teeth were capable of crushing not only those teeth, they didn't just leave marks. In Montana, the fossil remains bear the clear signatures of tyrannosaur teeth. I find myself picturing the scene. The bite marks so deep, so precise, they reveal the very moment another tyrannosaur pressed its teeth against the bone, tearing away flesh, fragmenting the carcass. For a paleontologist, I imagine it's like holding a time capsule. A glimpse into behavior that no textbook could ever fully capture. But what does it really mean? Was Tyrannosaurus rex eating its own kind? And if so, why? The most accepted hypothesis is opportunistic cannibalism. It makes a grim kind of sense. In those wild, hostile environments of the late Cretaceous, food scarcity could have driven even the largest predators to feed on their own dead. It wouldn't be unprecedented. Crocodiles, sharks, even bears sometimes resort to cannibalism when circumstances demand it. Why would it have been any different 66 million years ago? There's another, even more dramatic possibility. A fight between two Tyrannosaurus rex individuals. A battle over territory, mating rights, or dominance over a kill. The victor, then, might have consumed parts of the defeated rival. Wolves do something similar today, killing members of rival packs and feeding on them. In that light, Tyrannosaurus rex ceases to be just a killing machine. It becomes an animal with complex social behaviors, pushed to extremes.